There are a lot of questions in the Chargers tight end room after Gerald Everett, but the team took a step in the right direction this week, bringing in veteran Nick Vannett.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
After failing to address this earlier on in the offseason, the Chargers finally add a veteran tight end. Also, we're going to get into the new player who's going to make the biggest impact, and what does Coach Staley have to do this year to keep his job?
Yeah, and Tom Telesco for that matter as well. I think the seat should be warm all the way around, and honestly, it's not a good season for that to happen because the AFC is loaded, and good teams are going to be bounced from the playoffs left and right once we get there. But today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, you know we've reached a low point in our kind of thoughts on the tight end room when Nick Vannett, a veteran, right, is signed to the practice squad, and it's leading the show today. But I'm still excited about it, man, because I think it goes along with kind of the theme we saw yesterday with the Chargers. Hey, maybe these guys aren't on the active roster, but Nick Vannett feels like a guy that could very realistically get on the roster. And, I mean, I think overall, David, I'm very optimistic about this signing. I think this is a good signing, even though I think there's people that are probably going to try to poke holes in it just because this is not an exciting player by any means.
It's not an exciting player, but the move didn't need to be exciting, okay? It was the thought process behind it. It was the principle behind the move. It was the Chargers recognizing that what they have at the tight end position, specifically in the blocking realm, has not been good enough. So they went out and they added somebody who has extensive experience as a run blocking tight end. Yeah. That is the process that you should like. You should appreciate that. Same thing with adding Dean Marlowe yesterday to a safety, a veteran safety to the practice squad. They recognize that safety room is probably a little bit light on experience. They add a veteran to their practice squad. So process, you got to love it. I think it's definitely something that the Chargers should have done, and they did. So I am all in favor of this move.
And I like another veteran presence there. I mean, you have someone like Gerald Everett, who's obviously a veteran at this point, and there's no questions about Gerald Everett. No. But the problem has always been, hey, if Gerald Everett gets hurt, you have a ton of unknown commodities. I mean, you don't have 50 career receptions between the rest of the room, right? Yeah. I mean, you have Donald Parham with 40, Trey McKitty with under 10, Stone Smart brand new. It's just, it's hard because this isn't someone that you're going to look up Pro Football Focus grades and you're going to see a lot of nice things, right? Especially if you look at the run blocking grades from last year. But I sent you a little clip. I went back and watched what he looked like this last preseason just to kind of get an idea of the form that he was in. He looks like a capable blocker for me. And you might say that's an incredibly low bar, and I would agree with you. But the problem is you don't necessarily have anyone on this roster outside of Gerald Everett. I think he's a fine blocker that you know for sure you can get a capable blocker out of, right? That's what this dude is bringing to the table. Last year he was on 2 different teams, maybe not the best showing for him, but he's been a capable average blocker who can be an inline tight end that can line up on the end of the line of scrimmage, that can go do that, and he's also a guy that has 90 career catches, you know, twice as many as the rest of the Chargers tight ends basically combined, 874 yards, 6 career touchdowns, nothing that's going to blow you away, but having someone that can be that veteran guy, the guy that you know what you can get from him, just being capable, not being a total liability, right? Because that's what this is about. Yeah. And having some insurance on Trey McKitty, who none of us are sold on at this point, right? And it's not to be a knock on him. It's just, how could I be? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, how could I put a vote of confidence in that right now? We didn't see much improvement seemingly in the preseason. He had a down year from everyone from my mouth to Brandon Staley's, right? Has said as much. This gives you an option, right? If plan A doesn't work, if you don't get that improvement, you have plan B, and we've seen this throughout the practice squad, David, this year, which is something we talked about on yesterday's show. The Chargers bringing in more veterans, more backup plans, because now you have a backup plan for Trey McKitty, you have a backup plan for Darius Davis, you have a backup plan for every safety not named Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. So you see it coming together, you see the pieces, and I really like the approach the Chargers have taken, even though we're talking about the practice squad.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Vannett here, a 7-year veteran, had a pretty decent run blocking grade, at least in the preseason this year. Don't look at the rest of them. They're not great, like Daniel said. But 5 straight seasons of 100-plus run blocking snaps. So there is a ton of experience there. And, yeah, being on 2 different teams, having to learn 2 different schemes, that's got to be really difficult. So I'm not going to really hold that against him. But this move is all about having some pressure put on Trey McKitty. Yeah. Kind of holding his feet to the fire a little bit. Like now it's time to shape up, because now there is a guy that's on the roster that can legitimately step in and take your spot. And I don't think there was anywhere in the past that Trey McKitty had felt that way. Now there is. Now you have a boogeyman that's kind of hanging around, lurking around, trying to take your spot. And I like that. I think Trey McKitty has done nothing to be able to secure his spot so far. And so this pressure, I think it's going to be good. It's either you turn into coal or you turn into diamonds. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and we would take anything in between. A lot of gray area between that. I don't need you to be a diamond, right?
No.
But you can tell, and yes, I'm going to get excited about Nick Vannett, sue me. You know what I mean? It's just, it gives you something there. And it feels like last year you had a little bit higher, caliber signings with Morgan Fox and Kyle Van Noy and Bryce Callahan for sure. But you're seeing them take that same approach, getting veterans, getting dudes who have done it for a long time on this practice squad. And it just feels like that's going to pay dividends at some point for you. But it is Fan Mail Friday, and we want to get into your guys' questions, including this one from Spensai, who asked, if the Cardinals want to tank, should Tom Telesco call them up and offer them a 7th-round pick from the Dustin Hopkins trade for Zach Ertz? We'll shore up our blocking tight end need, kick Trey McKitty out. So Zach Ertz is not a good blocker. I mean, we should probably
he's not a blocking tight end.
It's not what he's known for. I think there's an argument, David, but I just don't think that's necessarily the right one.
Yeah, no, I'm out on Zach Ertz. 1, he's 32 years old. 2, he's coming off of a torn ACL that he tore in mid-November of last year. And 3, he has a base salary of $8.7 million.
That's going to be the biggest,
And
the biggest
that just can't happen. And quite frankly, I don't have any interest in adding any expensive veteran tight ends. I want to get a tight end that is young, that can grow with Justin Herbert, that can be the Gates to Rivers, right? I want somebody who can be there for the long haul. Obviously, I'm not putting any expectations out there, but my point is I don't want to add any expensive veteran tight ends. I want to get one in the draft that can be here for a while, that can develop and grow with the young quarterback.
And that's the problem. These moves are good. Nick Vannett is good for this year.
Exactly.
The future outlook at the position is still as shaky as it could be. You have Donald Parham under contract next year. You have Stone Smart and, Trey McKitty. Gerald Everett's gone next year. He's in free agency at the very least. There's, $50 million over the cap right now as we see it. So a lot's going into the future. And them not drafting a tight end this year in this class could come back to bite them. We'll see how it goes. But I think as far as Zach Ertz, if he was reasonable, of course you bring him in. I mean, a 7th-round pick, I would do that in a heartbeat, because it's like, okay, well, now you have a crazy duo between him and Gerald Everett that would give you a ton of mismatches, and you have a dude that's had at least 36 catches in every season of his career. And
he's like an extra receiver, basically.
Last, year when he was injured, the last 2 years in 28 games, he has 121 catches, right? So that's way more than even Gerald Everett would be projected for over that span. So, he can still provide. He's just not going to provide probably what this team needs. And financially, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. But it is Fan Mail Friday, and we have way more good questions to get into, including who the biggest impact is going to come from of the Chargers' newcomers. We have one guy in mind that might be playing on the defense, as well as just our general optimism. Some fans think this is going to be a special year, but it's still the Chargers. Still a lot they're going to have to prove to us. So we're going to get into that coming up right after this. First, I do need to tell you guys about FanDuel, though, because you need to get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $5. You can bet $5 and get $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. You bet $5, you get $200 back, and this is the crazy part for me. All customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Sign me up right there. I wish I wasn't signed up so I could get re-signed up so I could get back in on this action. But betting on football is the best thing you can bet on all season long, period. End of story. I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we're in football season. You can bet on the Chargers week 1, 2.5-point favorites over the Dolphins, or 9.5 wins. You think they're getting 10? You can bet on that at FanDuel, as well as, hey, other crazy things. Do you think Mike Williams is going to get 10 receiving touchdowns this year? You can get that at plus 500 right now. That seems like a decent bet to me, but now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is so easy to use, and you can be on everything from spreads, player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Let's get back to this Fan Mail Friday here, David, because we have a bunch more good questions to get into, and I want to start with one that you brought to me, a good question, I think, from Adam Perkins, who says, big fan of the show. I'm one of the everydayers. Question for the podcast: which new player to the team will have the biggest impact this season? Appreciate the content every day. Bolt up. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate you and all the everydayers out there. And as you guys know, we'll be back here on Monday with you guys with just some big picture things for this team going into 2023, because the season is here. We got crossover Thursday next week.
We made it.
We got game previews next week. Tua versus Justin Herbert next week. But let's talk about this, David. The biggest impact from one of the newcomers on this team. Who did you go with?
Yeah, obviously not a lot of options for newcomers here. I mean,
if you're not going with the rookie, yeah.
Right, yeah, if we're not going with the rookies, but even considering the rookies, I think this one's pretty easy. It's Eric Kendricks for me. Eric Kendricks is a former All-Pro that's played at a high level for a very, very long time in this league. His communication, his presence, his command in the middle of the defense, his ability to understand where people need to line up and how to properly align people, I think is going to make a huge impact. But I think what's going to make the biggest impact of all is his impact on Kenneth Murray. And I think helping unlock the best version of Kenneth Murray, which by all accounts we have seen so far this offseason. We'll have to see that translate in between the lines on the grass, but if he's able to get the best and be able to unlock that vast athletic potential that Kenneth Murray has, if he can marry that with the mental aspect of the game and go out there and execute, my goodness, this linebacking tandem could be very, very good.
Yeah, and Eric Kendricks is the same guy I went with. We're going to talk about our offensive X factor there. I mean, I think you could make a case for someone like Quentin Johnston, right, and just what he can bring to the offense, but when you need your defense to be as much better as you need your defense to be, and you only added one piece really on defense, that's going to be a huge impact one way or the other, right? Because if it doesn't work out, then you're going to find yourself giving up the same big plays, the same explosive plays, guys not being in the right gap, and so much more. I mean, Derwin James just talked about this too, and just how much the DBs he feels like in run defense specifically are feeling a lot better, knowing where they're supposed to be. It helps when you have a green dot in the middle who's an all-pro and communicates at such a high level like Eric Kendricks does. I mean, that's going to be so huge for this defense, and it kind of has to be. I mean, the best way for this Chargers run defense to get better is by Eric Kendricks being the things they need him to be. And it's not going to be him, making 180 tackles this year and single-handedly fixing it. But it's going to be having everyone lined up, stopping those explosive runs, being able to play sideline to sideline, being able to stay away from the traffic in the middle of the field to keep yourself freed up to go make a tackle, turning, the 10-yard runs into 4-yard runs and things like that. I mean, I just think there's so much.
Eliminating the 30 and 40-yard runs, right, Dan? Is just getting rid of those explosives. I mean, if they just do that at a bare minimum, it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, and I think it will. I mean, I truly do think it will be a lot different. But how different? How optimistic should we be? We do have a question about that. We have Chris Saiz who asks, on a scale from 1 to 10, how optimistic are you in the team this year? I think this year is going to be a special one for us. What are your thoughts? David, he wants a 1 to 10. You're the optimist of the two of us for sure. What did you give him?
Yeah, I feel very, very good about this Chargers team. And it's because the top-end talent is there. We all know that, but I feel like this is one of the deepest Chargers teams that I have covered as a professional. I really, truly believe that. So my optimism level is at an 8. I feel very, very good about this team. Obviously, given health, you have stars at every single position on both sides of the ball. So I am very optimistic. If they stay healthy, if it just regresses to the mean with the injuries, this is a very, very dangerous Chargers team that really can compete with anybody any given Sunday.
I feel like you said an 8 and then you described a 9. I don't know. I feel like you're kind of underdoing it there for how optimistic you are. I mean, 8, solid B, that's fine. I went with a 7. I mean, so I'm not, I'm very close to where you are. I mean, this is the thing. You have Justin Herbert. There's always hope. You know what I mean?
Yes.
The one thing I would say I'm higher on than maybe most people is just the continuity. And it's something I've preached on the entire offseason, Yeah, when they didn't make significant free agent additions, I had the same questions as everyone else.
Sure.
But the more I thought about it, especially, with how long it's kind of taken some of these players to get fully click into Brandon Staley's defense, like, okay, well, maybe it's not bad that you're only adding one new defensive starter, right? Even though it was an underperforming unit, you have a lot of people coming back with a lot more experience, and I'm high on that. It's still the Chargers, and I think the other thing is just the AFC is so loaded, and that's the hard thing. It's just like, I think this team has every chance to be really good, and there's just a lot of really, really good teams, which takes us to our next question here from Dubsack, who asks, with the Chargers flying under the radar because of high expectations for other AFC teams, what do you think Brandon Staley has to do at a minimum, example, just making the playoffs, to keep his job? And do you think Telesco is any threat of losing his job this season? So, David, I'll let you have the floor first on this one. What do you think?
I mean, the expectations are super high. I think the Chargers made that clear after the season, before free agency, when they restructured the contracts of Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen.
Not as high as last year, though. I mean, easily, right? Because last year they were coming off, as he's saying, right? I mean, you were the big winners in free agency. You got J.C. Jackson. You did Sebastian Joseph Day and Morgan Fox, all the big additions. This year, it is a little bit more under the radar.
Yeah, it's under the radar because they underperformed, but I still think their expectations are high because this is not going to look the same after the season. I mean, some very, very tough choices are going to have to be made. So I do believe it's very, very high. As far as what needs to happen for Brandon Staley to keep his job, it's a playoff win at minimum. I think that's where we're at. I mean, it's not good enough to just get there. I think everyone expects the Chargers to get to the playoffs. It's not about getting there. It's about getting there and doing damage. It's about winning. Honestly, I even get to the point to where I almost feel like it has to be more than one playoff win. I just feel like it just has to be that way. And then for Tom Telesco, he's definitely under the hot seat too. I mean, not enough wins, not enough playoff wins, not enough division wins. Absolutely. Both of those guys, I think their fate is probably tied together.
This is a crazy thing, man. Like, it does feel like at least a playoff win, right? But it also feels like it matters how the playoff loss happens after the win, right? As we saw, everyone got on the charge for not making the playoffs, and they learned out the hard way last year that just making the playoffs can still leave you with an incredibly poor taste in your mouth, right?
Sure.
So I think that matters. I mean, if the Chargers win a game and lose a one-score game to Kansas City and they go on to win the Super Bowl, should Brandon Staley get fired for that? If the Chargers win 12 games in 2023? This is the thing, man. Like, you see the development. You see things starting to build here. Right? It has to turn into results. It has to be this season.
Yes.
But, man, it's going to suck if the Chargers, win 12 games, win one playoff game, and embarrass another, and then you're starting the whole kind of thing over again, and you can't rely on that same development that we've seen from young players under Brandon Staley or the veterans getting added. I mean, the Chargers have drafted way better since Brandon Staley took over, right? Like,
concentrations on improving the offensive line. I mean, like, majorly.
Tons of things.
Premium draft picks on that. Yeah, I mean, big differences for sure.
Sure, but just the development. That's the main thing. Yeah. We've seen a coaching staff that knows how to develop players for the most part. Trey McKitty's a big-time outlier. When you talk about some of the developments we've seen from other guys, specifically this year, you have guys like Dean Leonard and, just JT Woods that you've seen huge jumps for. Last year, you saw them get guys like Jasir Taylor up to speed. You saw a huge jump from Alohi Gilman.
You got Trey Pipkins getting a new contract after his start. Yeah.
A bunch of guys you could go to, but it sucks. It would suck to lose that, right? Because it does feel like they're building something, but at the same time, it is results. And I mean, Tom Telesco, 0 AFC championships, or 0 AFC West championships, I should say. He's made the playoffs 3 times now, and 11 seasons now he's going into. So he should absolutely be on the hot seat. He's picked 3 different coaches already. Will he get a 4th? I don't know. It's hard to imagine. It feels like these two are pretty tied at this point, and I think you've seen them make the all-in moves, right? And the restructures and things like that, I think, have a lot more to do with, okay, well, what does it matter if we don't win this season? And both of us are out of the job. But let's be clear. Chargers fans should be hoping like crazy that Brandon Staley figures this thing out and this thing goes and achieves what I think all know it could be, but you're still going to, I mean, you win one playoff game. I mean, you could be playing the Bills or the Bengals in the first round of the playoffs, the Ravens. You're going to have to go up against the Chiefs. It's going to be a crazy, crazy year in the AFC. But we do have more questions to get into, including talked about the biggest impact defensively. What about an X factor offensively? I have one guy in my mind, I think off the radar. I don't think David's going with the same X factor as me. We also have a tier calling into the show, and if a tier calls in, we have to know what he's talking about, and he's yelling crazy stuff as he always is. So we're going to get into that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy your tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. Gametime is the premier place for last-minute tickets, especially knowing you have that, same guaranteed price that you're going to get. Listen to this. With Gametime, if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You will actually make money on that if you can find tickets that are cheaper than Gametime. That's how cheap it is. That's how good the last-minute deals you get with Gametime are. It's always great. I mean, I imagine I do a lot more things than I even do. Just looking at the Gametime app, I'm like, oh my God, I could go do this. And every once in a while, I go do it, and I get cheap tickets with Gametime. They always show you where your tickets are and the view you're going to have as well, which I love. But all you guys have to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. You get a cheap ticket, and you get $20 off when you use that code LOCKEDONNFL. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code with LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get into the rest of these Fan Mail Friday questions here, David. But I do want to tell everyone to make sure you're checking out the Ultimate Divisional crossover that's going on. Bonus episodes on the YouTube feed, on the podcast feed right now. And we are represented on there, holding it down for the Chargers in the AFC West. Maybe Justin Herbert will come up and get on that Patrick Mahomes level. Tons of fun conversations over there and some good rivalries, obviously, in the AFC West. So hope you guys are enjoying those bonus episodes. And the everydayers, of course, that we will be back with you guys, as always, on Monday with a lot to get into. I mean, next week is game week. The shift goes to the regular season, and I think we have a lot of fun stuff, some over-under, some seasonal expectations, Justin Herbert MVP talk. Lots of good stuff coming for you guys next week. But let's get to the everydayers who wanted to chime in on today's show, including Nicholas Troy, who asks, who do you consider to be the X factor on the Chargers offense? David, I don't think we're going to have the same guy, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, all right, we'll see. I think a lot of attention has been paid to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams for a very good reason. I mean, they're fantastic. They are playmakers. Keenan Allen has looked phenomenal, and I almost picked Keenan Allen for this because I truly do believe he's going to have a breakout year.
Who'd you pick?
I feel like he's going to have one of the biggest years of his career, but another person that's going to benefit because of that is going to be Gerald Everett. I really do believe Gerald Everett is going to pop off because they're going to go deep. The Chargers said it many times. They are going to attack the deep part of the field, and while they're doing that, they're going to have people that are going to be available and open underneath over the middle. Gerald Everett is going to be that guy. He's going to eat. He's always been a yards after catch monster. I feel like he's going to have more opportunities to do that in this Kellen Moore offense.
Yeah, I guess it depends kind of what your definition is of an X factor, too. I like that because, I mean, it feels like there's a multitude of outcomes. I mean, Gerald Everett gets a little bit better production-wise every season, just his entire career, right? Every year feels like it's going to be the breakout. But I think with what you've seen Kellen Moore be able to do with someone like Dalton Schultz and turn him into a $10 million a year tight end, there's nothing Dalton Schultz athletically can do that Gerald Everett can't, right? He's a little bit bigger. Gerald Everett's a smaller tight end for sure. But there's plenty they can do with him. He is an offensive weapon, and he's in better hands now. With, I think someone that we
and a 2-point god
can get him better, in better situations, in better matchups with Kellen Moore. But I went with Keenan Allen. I mean, to me, he is the X factor because of what he means to this offense. Like, I just think that without Keenan Allen last year, obviously we saw what it looked like without him. I mean, when he was on the field, if you get the version of what Keenan Allen looked like last year when he was healthy for 17 games this year,
oh my goodness,
after having one of the best camps of his career, I mean, Keenan Allen's always great. We don't come out of camp thinking of Keenan Allen the way we do that he did after this camp. Like, this is maybe his best camp ever, and he was torching dudes every single day when, Mike Williams
at every level of
times.
the field, too. It wasn't just the short and intermediate. He was beating people deep as well.
He was. I mean, just and one of the things that Brandon Staley said stuck out to me, and I brought it up a couple of times, which is just, you don't only have to go to Keenan Allen on third down because he's good at third downs, right?
That's
so
right.
I think we're going to see him used a lot of different ways, and I think, I could have gone with Quentin Johnston as the biggest addition offensively. I could have gone with Rashawn Slater, and boy, did I want to, right?
I thought about Rashawn too, man. Just having that
Foster
guy
Sherrill's the backup. He's an all-pro player.
Incredible.
Easy to do that. But we do have some voicemails I want to get into, so let's see what Weston has for us this week.
Hey, guys. Weston from Minnesota here. I got a question for you. So there's been a lot of talk, obviously, about J.C. Jackson coming back and everything and how he's been easing into practice and that he's going to play and probably going to play week 1. But you guys haven't really touched on if he's been good practicing or if he's looked at his old form or like how he was on the Chargers last year where he wasn't that good. Let me know if he's been playing good or if he's been playing bad and you guys have been quiet about it. Thanks.
No, I mean, if he had been bad, we definitely wouldn't have been quiet about it
Nah.
for sure. I mean, the hard thing is he didn't practice a ton, right? They've been ramping him back up. Not a ton of sample size in him in pads. When I was out there, the small sample I saw of him, he looked pretty good. Daniel Popper talked about a couple of days where he had, really, really good days. But at the end of the day, David, like, none of us know the answer to this until we see the dude on the field, and it's going to have a huge impact on the Chargers defense.
Yeah, I don't even think J.C. Jackson knows what version of J.C. Jackson is going to be put out there, right? But the thing is this guy is known for turning the ball over. The nickname is Mr. INT, and the last healthy season, he had 8 of those interceptions. So if he gets anywhere close to that form, you have the J.C. Jackson Island, which it seems like if you listen to the coaches talking, all of them are expecting him to come back and cover the number 1 wide receiver. Yeah. And we haven't heard of any setbacks. I haven't heard of very many. Yeah, right. But I think that was just them managing the injury. But yeah, I haven't heard a lot of the interceptions, right? I haven't heard of a lot of that in camp. So we do need to see what J.C. Jackson is going to look like. This is a big year for him. I don't know what it's going to look like week 1. I hope that he's out there ready to go. And if he is, my goodness, the cornerback room for the Chargers could be very, very dangerous.
It changes everything, but there was legitimately one setback where he was in pads and then didn't come back into pads for 10 days, right? And Daniel Popper has talked about it. I mean, there's definitely something happened there because there's no ramp-up period where you just don't practice in pads for a week and a half. So we don't know. That's the simple part of it, and I obviously question whether we will ever see that player again.
Right.
If he can be 80% of that player, the Chargers will be in a much better place than they were last year. And I think that's what you have to hope. But it is this very serious injury, and I think very legitimate questions around it. But let's sneak a tier in here real quick because obviously, it's a tier. Let's see what he has.
David, my baby, this is a tier. I love you. Week 1, Jalen Ramsey is out. What is Miami defensive plan? To take out Keenan and force everybody else to show up, or take away our deep shot? Let me hear you, please. Love you, my baby. Crossover Thursday. It's coming. Let's go.
All right, my baby. What do you got?
So, I mean, this defense that the Chargers are going to go up against is very similar to the defense that the Chargers deploy because the Vic Fangio style is, basically what Brandon Staley likes to run. So they like to have the 2 deep safety shell. They want to limit the deep shots, limit the explosive plays, and they still have mechanisms in place to be able to cover the number 1 wide receiver as well.
The big thing is going to be them trying to limit the explosive plays. We don't know how much Fangio is going to change his defense, with the year off, but it's going to look probably close to the same, which is what they usually do is they roll extra defensive backs to the strong side of the field so they can get a corner and a safety covering that deep half of the field, while on the weak side you have 1 safety and 1 corner that's more of a shallow zone. So that's what we'll probably see from him. That's what they've done in years past. There's different ways they try to stop the run as well. but I don't think it's going to be singularly trying to stop Keenan Allen. And I think the Chargers have enough weapons now that it's going to be kind of hard to just try to take one guy away, especially with Quentin Johnston in the mix now, someone that should be a cover 2 beater or at least helping you with those underneath plays and being able to find those hidden yards there, which we just haven't seen in years past. But thank you to Atir and everyone who contributed on Fan Friday. We appreciate you guys. And make sure you don't miss any shows like this. Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on all of our social media, so you can hit us up on Twitter or X at Locked On LAC. You can find me on X at Dan Talk Sports and David Drogemeyer at DroTalk SD. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. Thank you to Weston and Atir calling into the voicemail line. Barnaby, we'll have something on your question next week, just part of what we were going to talk about anyway, so hopefully you stick around for that. But if you guys want to get on that action, call into 323-524-7924. But thank you guys again for always contributing. We love getting questions and loving hearing what you guys want to talk about and want to hear us talk about. So we'll be back with you guys on Monday, as we always are, for the everydayers. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.